We tend to think of the brain as the mind.
Well, both Meek and Bailey make a really sharp distinction there. They argue the brain is basically an electrobiochemical mechanism. Think of it as a biological computer.
The hardware.
Exactly. But the mind, they say, is the programmer. It's a separate intelligence using the brain. Meek even points to neurosurgery, like Dr. Wilder Penfield's work.
What did Penfield find?
That, remarkably, you could remove large parts of the brain, and it often had surprisingly little effect on the patient's core personality or sense of self. It strongly suggests the mind isn't just in the brain tissue.
That fits with another idea they bring up, right? The sheer emptiness of the body, atomically speaking.
Right. We're mostly water, and at the atomic level, like 99-point-something% empty space or void.
Which sounds empty, but it isn't, according to them.
No, not at all. Canon Andrew Glasewski, who Meek cites, explained this void is actually what allows other finer energy bodies to interpenetrate our physical form. Our apparent solidity is sort of an illusion that hides this permeability.
So we're walking around being interpenetrated by what exactly? These finer energy bodies.
Yeah, invisible energy fields. Meek calls them bioplasmic bodies. Bailey calls them etheric bodies. And they don't just pass through us, they actually shape us.
Shape us. How?
Meek uses another analogy here, like jelly molds. These energy fields provide the template, the form, for our physical organs. It's fascinating because ancient Chinese medicine discovered these energy flows, the acupuncture meridians, centuries ago.
Okay, so we have the physical body, these interpenetrating energy bodies.
Yeah.
How does it all stay connected, especially if the mind isn't in the brain?
That's where the silver cord comes in. It's described as this tenuous, non-physical link connecting the mind and soul to the physical body.
And the people have seen this.
Apparently, yes. It's mentioned way back in biblical times, and people report seeing it during out-of-body experiences, OBEs, and sometimes observed at the moment of death. It sort of reinforces this idea we're plugged into something bigger.
This really opens up the idea of reality being much more complex than we usually think. Multi-layered.
Exactly. The sources talk about many mansions, different levels of being, different dimensions, all interpenetrating, existing right here, right now.
But we can't sense them.
Not with our usual five senses, no. They're composed of finer energy at a very high rate of vibration, way beyond our normal detection range.
Which leads us to Alice Bailey's concept of omnipresence. How does that fit?
Yeah, omnipresence is key for her, especially for understanding telepathy. She describes the fundamental reality as being rooted in the ether. Not the old scientific ether, but more like an ocean of energies.
An ocean connecting everything.
Pretty much. This ether forms the single synthetic energy body of our planet, maybe even the solar system. And if everything is part of this one energy body,
then there's no possible separateness. We're all inherently connected.
bingo. You're never truly separate from anything else. And interestingly, this connects back to physics.
How so?
The law of conservation of energy. Matter and energy can't be created or destroyed, right? They just change form or frequency.
Okay.
So, if the mind and soul are forms of this finer energy, as Meek and Bailey propose, then that principle suggests they don't just vanish at death, they transform, they continue.
Which makes survival after death sound, well, almost logical within that framework. So, if these higher levels exist, how do they interact with us here?
Good question. The influence needs to be stepped down in vibration to affect physical matter. This stepping down process is what leads to all sorts of subtle communication.
Like telepathy. Bailey breaks that down, doesn't she, into different types?
She does, yeah. 3 main types, showing an evolution in how humanity communicates subtly. First up is instinctual telepathy.
Instinctual, like gut feelings.
Exactly. Solar plexus to solar plexus. It's all about raw feelings, emotions, fear, hate, desire. Think mother-child bonds, herd mentality in animals, even mass psychology or public opinion shifts.
So that's more primal, less mental.
Very much so. Bailey says it was dominant in ancient times, like Lemuria and Atlantis, but she notes it's less effective for people who are very mentally focused, very logical. Their minds can kind of block it.
Okay, what's next?
Mental telepathy. This is mind-to-mind. It's becoming more common now, especially among, educated people. It uses the throat center primarily for sending thoughts.
Why the throat center?
Because it's linked to creative work, expression, projecting ideas. But for this to be accurate, Bailey stresses you need to quiet down strong emotions and desires. They can really muddy the signal.
Makes sense. Emotion clouds thinking, and the highest form.
That's intuitional telepathy. This is soul to soul. It requires a really integrated personality, someone who can focus their consciousness at the soul level with mind and brain working together perfectly.
Wow. What does that involve?
It activates several energy centers, the head center, the ajna center between the eyebrows.
The third eye spot.
Right, and the throat center too. Bailey believes this is the source of our greatest inspirations, profound writings, scriptures, the language of symbols. It's tapping into a much deeper level of knowing.
But you mentioned telepathy is just one part of something bigger, impression.
Yes, impression is deeper, more fundamental. Telepathy is like the outward, external result of it. Impression is described as a more universal, subjective way of receiving communication. It's like you get the essence of an idea or feeling before it even forms into clear thought.
Like the download.
Sort of, yeah. It starts vague, maybe just a feeling or sensation, then it gradually forms into definite thought forms that eventually register in the brain.
And where did these impressions come from? Is there a source?
According to Bailey, yes. There is a kind of hierarchy. At the top, cosmically speaking, is Shambhala, the planetary head center. It receives impressions from really vast sources, like Sirius or Venus. These get recorded in the universal mind.
Okay, cosmic level.
Then you have the hierarchy, the planetary heart center. It gets impressions from Shambhala, sometimes refined by these highly evolved beings called Nirmanakayas, like spiritual filters, and also from other great lives.
And then it reaches us. Humanity.
Right. Humanity is seen as the planetary throat center, the center of creative expression. We receive impressions from the hierarchy, which can spark ideas that shape public opinion. Spiritual seekers might receive impressions from groups called ashrams, and there's this new group of world servers acting as a bridge.
So it's like a flow from cosmic sources down through different levels to humanity.
Exactly. And crucially, we're not just receivers. A mind that's rightly trained, as Bailey puts it, can take these impressions and shape them into required form. We become creators in mental matter.
We're actively shaping reality with these received ideas. That's a huge responsibility.
It really is.
Okay, so we've covered the nature of reality, these subtle bodies, communication. But let's talk evidence. For a lot of people, that's the sticking point. Meek lays out quite a bit, doesn't he?
He does. He organizes it into about 12 different areas, combining old wisdom and modern research. It's quite systematic.
Where does he start?
Well, just with historical and religious writings, the sheer consistency across cultures and time periods, ancient Greeks, Egyptians, biblical texts, this near universal belief in spirit and an afterlife. He suggests that persistence points to something real.
Okay, historical consensus. What about personal experiences?
That's a big one. Deathbed visions, near-death experiences, NDEs, and out-of-body experiences, OBEs. He mentions researchers like Kubler-Ross and Moody who brought NDEs to public attention.
Right, people reporting leaving their bodies, seeing a light.
Exactly. Seeing the silver cord sometimes, meeting deceased relatives. He also mentions people like Robert Monroe, who apparently became quite adept at consciously inducing OBEs, traveling out of body.
Then there's the whole area of mediums.
Yes, communications through mediums, getting information supposedly from people who have passed into the worlds of spirit. Meek gives a really striking example, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
The Sherlock Holmes guy.
The very same. Apparently, after he died, he arranged supposedly 22 sittings through a medium specifically to correct views he held about reincarnation while alive. He even provided a spirit photograph as proof, according to the account.
Wow, that's specific. He also mentions work with obsessing spirits.
Yes, people like Mrs. Bertha Harris and Dr. Carl Wickland, which ties into the next category, apparitions, hauntings, and obsessing spirits.
Ghosts, basically.
Well, they differentiate solid ghosts versus vaporous ghosts. But the obsessing spirits idea is quite intense. These are described as earthbound souls stuck on the lowest astral plane because of, say, addictions or negativity.
And they attach to living people.
They attach to people's auras, supposedly. Meek calls it a fact of life almost totally unrecognized by present-day psychiatry. It's a challenging concept.
Definitely. What about spirit doctors? That sounds unusual.
It does. These are accounts of deceased doctors, apparently on higher planes, who continue their work by influencing living healers. The most famous case cited is Arrigo in Brazil.
Tell me about him.
He had almost no formal education, like 2 years, but he could apparently diagnose complex illnesses and prescribe modern medicines with incredible accuracy. He claimed a deceased German doctor, Dr. Fritz, was guiding him, speaking into his ear.
Incredible if true. Any others?
Meek mentions a friend of his, Bill, who was guided by a dochnik, So, multiple accounts of this kind of spiritual assistance and healing.
Okay, what else is on Meek's list? You mentioned spirit photos earlier.
Right, spirit photographs, photos where extra faces or figures identified as deceased people appear unexpectedly. There are historical examples, like one of a bridal couple where a dead sailor friend supposedly showed up.
People would say those are fakes, double exposures.
Of course, and Meek acknowledges that. But he also mentions attempts using infrared film supposedly to rule out fraud, which in some cases seem to validate the phenomena for those researchers.
Then there's materialization. That sounds even rarer.
Extremely rare. Materialization is when a deceased person or part of them appears in solid, tangible form. The explanation involves drawing energy, called ectoplasm, from the medium and the sitters. Meek describes experiments in Brazil where mediums were put in cages observed by scientists and doctors, and they apparently recorded weight loss in the medium during these events.
Trying to get empirical data, fascinating. What about reincarnation?
Reincarnation and karma, huge concepts. The idea that the soul survives and comes back in a new body for more learning. Meek notes over half the world accepts it, and it's even being scientifically researched now.
And karma ties in how?
Karma is presented as the law of cause and effect. What you do, think, and feel in this life directly impacts your state after death, your vibrational level. Your life quality now determines your afterlife quality then. Meek calls the soul the original recycling plant.
That's a powerful motivator for living well now.
Yeah.
Okay, one last category of evidence.
The most modern one, perhaps. Electronic communication, ITC, sometimes called EVP or electronic voice phenomena. This is research using audio recorders, radios, trying to capture voices or messages from the deceased on tape.
People like Jurgensen and Roddy have pioneered that, right?
Exactly. Meek saw this as a potential path towards undeniable technological proof of survival in the future.
Okay, so that's a lot of different types of evidence Meek presents. If we accept for a moment that consciousness survives,
Yeah.
what's it like? What happens right after death?
Well, forget the idea of waiting for some distant judgment day. The sources suggest an immediate judgment, but it's more like self-judgment or a natural sorting process. The quality of your life, your thoughts, your vibration determines where you initially find yourself in the astral planes.
Astral planes.
Plural.
Yes, they describe different levels. The lowest astral plane, well, that sounds pretty grim, described as hell, Hades, purgatory, a dark, dismal, dangerous place.
Who ends up there?
According to Meek, it's for the greedy, self-centered, unloving, resentful. Crucially, addictions and negative patterns don't just vanish at death. So if you had strong cravings, you might still feel them intensely but be unable to satisfy them, leading to torment. It's literally a world created by thought.
Wow, that's sobering. Are there better places? Thankfully, yes. There are the intermediate astral planes. These are more like rest and recovery areas. Think hospitals for souls who were sick or died traumatically, or institutions of learning for those needing adjustment.
A rehabilitation zone. And then,
The highest astral planes, often called heaven or summerland. This sounds much better. A wonderful realm, no pain, no suffering, full of opportunities for spiritual growth, even encounters with angelic beings.
so different levels depending on your earthly life. Is that the end of the journey?
Not necessarily. There's also the concept of the second death, which isn't an end, but another transition.
Shedding another layer.
Exactly. Is shedding the astral body to be reborn onto the causal or mental level, a higher plane you've qualified for through your growth. It's continued evolution.
And do we meet people we knew? Loved ones?
Yes. The idea is you connect with those you have an affinity for. But interestingly, you might also need to encounter people where there's unfinished business, unresolved issues that need working through for growth.
What about pets?
Good news for animal lovers. The sources suggest beloved pets, especially domesticated ones, also survive. They gain some individuality before eventually returning to their species' group soul.
That's comforting. A recurring theme seems to be the power of thought.
Absolutely huge. Thought as a causal force. It shapes your reality on Earth, and it shapes your experience in the afterlife. Meek states, most of what we have in this physical world first existed in the mental and causal worlds. Our thoughts literally build our worlds.
Given all this, can we get help from, well, the other side? Guidance.
Yes, The idea is that individuals can receive guidance and inspiration, what we often call intuition, from helpful beings on higher planes. Guides, teachers, angels, whatever term you use.
But there's a caution there.
Definitely. Communication isn't always easy or clear. There's potential for wishful thinking, self-delusion, or even misinterpreting things. So discernment is key. Don't just blindly accept everything.
So bringing it all together, what's the ultimate point of this whole cycle of life, death, afterlife, maybe reincarnation?
Meek puts it very clearly. The purpose of each life is to grow mentally, emotionally, and spiritually back toward the level of creative intelligence from which it originally issued. It's all about evolution, growth. And that growth determines your next stop.
It's a continuous journey upward, ideally.
That's the picture painted.
Okay, let's shift back to communication, specifically telepathy. Alice Bailey sees this sensitivity not as something weird or forced, right?
Not at all. She calls it a normal unfoldment. It happens naturally as a person becomes more spiritually oriented and dedicated. Trying to force it prematurely, she warns, can actually cause problems. It needs to unfold organically.
And our aura plays a role in this.
Yes, the magnetic aura, that subtle energy field around us. Bailey describes it as a recording agent for these subtle impressions. As you evolve spiritually, your aura changes.
How does it change?
It shifts from being dominated by astral, emotional energies to being more mentally focused, and eventually radiates the energy of the soul itself. This refinement allows you to pick up on higher, clearer impressions.
That's fascinating. And she gives stats on where telepathic messages actually come from. That was surprising.
It really is. According to her analysis, something like 85% of what people perceive as telepathic messages actually come from their own subconscious mind.
85%. Not from masters or guides.
Very little from them directly, only about 8% from soul impressions, 5% maybe from more advanced students or disciples, and a tiny 2% directly from masters. It really emphasizes looking within first.
That changes the perspective entirely. So if someone wants to develop this ability for, say, helping others, what's involved?
It requires real inner work. Decentralization and detachment, getting your own ego and personal problems out of the way for clarity. Love and impersonality are crucial, especially for group work, to avoid judgment or suspicion distorting things.
And motive is key, you mentioned.
Absolutely critical, the right motive. Any attempt to impress thoughts on others must be utterly selfless. Using these subtle influences for personal gain or control is labeled black magic because it undermines the free will of the other person. A serious ethical line.
Makes sense. What else?
Mind control and alignment. Keeping the mind steady, focused in the light, and ensuring the brain registers the information accurately without your own emotions coloring it. It's about becoming a clear channel.
This sounds like it applies to groups, too, not just individuals.
Definitely. Group telepathic work is a major focus for Bailey. Developing group harmony, a group love so strong that it prevents barriers, is essential. She points to the new group of world servers as an example of a group working telepathically to bridge higher influences to humanity.
And eventually, individuals can become senders as well as receivers.
Yes. Through dedicated practice and transformation, she links it to a stage called the Transfiguration Initiation. Individuals can become impressing agents. They become evocative and invocative centers of energy, able to consciously draw down and radiate light and higher energies to help humanity.
So the ultimate goal of all this understanding, this communication, seems to be overcoming our sense of being separate individuals.
Exactly. It's about dispelling the great illusion of separateness. Bailey is very clear. Our feeling of being separate is just an illusion, born from ignorance of the underlying unity, the one life flowing through everything via the etheric body.
And the Great Invocation Prayer is related to this.
Yes, she says it was given specifically to help humanity hasten the dispelling of this great illusion.
It really positions humanity in a central role in the cosmos, doesn't it?
Incredibly central. There's a powerful statement. The keynote of the Lord of the World is humanity. For it is the basis, the goal, and the essential inner structure of all being. We're not just passengers. We're fundamental to the whole plan.
And we have a specific job, a mediating role.
Yes, humanity is seen as the great middle kingdom. We mediate between the higher centers, Shambhala, and the hierarchy, and the lower kingdoms, animal, vegetable, mineral. We're the bridge. And eventually we're meant to become the main impressing agent for those lower kingdoms, too.
Wow. What's the long-term vision for humanity in these texts?
It's pretty grand. The idea is that humanity will become normally telepathic, consciously aware and using it maybe in about 500 years.
Just part of everyday life.
Right. And the ultimate goal is achieving masterhood, a state where humanity is sensitive to impressions from all life, fully connected to the world of souls and intuition. This leads to a complete planetary synthesis, manifesting the divine purpose.
It's a vast evolutionary picture.
Truly cosmic in scale.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. Peeling back layers of reality, exploring subtle bodies, telepathy, life after death. It really paints a picture of a universe far more interconnected and, frankly, stranger than we usually assume.
Definitely. From that energy body underpinning your physical form to this web of communication across dimensions, it suggests who you are, what happens after death. It's all part of this huge, ongoing evolutionary journey.
And that point about the quality of your life today determining your afterlife, that really sticks with you.
It does. It's a direct call to examine your thoughts, your actions, your spiritual growth right now. Because according to these sources, it literally shapes your future reality.
Which brings us to our final thought for reflection. If you truly accepted deep down what these sources suggest, that you literally cannot die and your consciousness goes on forever, what would change for you? How would truly living that truth shift your choices, your relationships, your whole sense of purpose, starting right now?